Hello and welcome to a Blue Monday TWTD collaboration special interview with a one-time Ipswich Town midfielder with 100 appearances, 16 goals, part of Joe Royle's playoff hunting side of 03, 04, 04, 05, and now a pundit, a co-commentator, part of ITFC's matchday commentary team. Welcome to the podcast, Ian Westlake. How are you?
Yes, very good. Thank you for having me.
And now a voice that will be familiar to people up and down the country and overseas every week. So we'll talk to you about that. And welcome back to the pod, Phil. It's been a while since we've met up, since the summer, I think. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. Well, I've got a bit of a cold, but other than that, not too bad.
It's powering through. God bless you for sticking with us. We are going to talk all things, Ian. We're going to take you right back to the start, and I'll hand over to Phil.
Yes, so an Essex lad. Clacton, I think you're from, aren't you? How did you first link up with Ipswich Town?
Funnily, I tell this story a million times. I was a swimmer. My family are swimming families. So I went to a gala once. I think I was about 11. Turned up, swam because we were late without warming up, and tore my shoulder. So then couldn't swim anymore. So he thought, okay, I'll play football while I can't swim. So I had a couple of months off. And then I only played sort of 4 or 5 games for Clacton, Clacton Kestrels, and then within those handful of games, Ipswich had come, seen a game, and then I was at the academy. So I thought, all right, I'll do football as well as swimming. So it's just it was luck. Like someone was there. I wasn't good at football, and during my career, I wasn't that good at football. I was very fit. Just way fitter than any other 11-year-old boy. Like my dad, we used to swim before school, after school, land training. I was just like a good athlete, and they thought, oh, okay, we could probably work with that. And at the time, I was left-footed, very left-footed, and they liked, they're always short left-footed players. So it was a combination of just being fit and left-footed. They thought, oh, we'll take a punt on him. It turned out okay in the end.
So how good a swimmer were you? I think England schools water polo, is that right?
Yeah, that's nonsense. That was just something that you found that when I raced Karen Pickering. That's what one of the guys on Sky Sports said. England schools water polo. That was just, I don't know where they made it up from. I was a good swimmer. Swam counties. County level. Went to southern counties. Never made national swimming. But good. And then water polo. I played for Great Britain at water polo. So I played for the under-18s, and I was only 16. But then it was the time when you signed your YTS. So I got offered YTS to get paid to play football, move to Ipswich, accommodation, all of that. Not a lot of money, but it was getting paid at 16. Or there was a trip to Portugal for, I think, one of the Junior World Championships of water polo. And it was like, buy your own tracksuit, buy your own plane ticket, buy this, because obviously there's just no money in it. So Dad sort of was like, well, probably go the football route instead of the water polo route. But that was just sort of how it turned out.
And in terms of sort of swimming generally, I remember you telling me before you weren't tall enough to be a kind of competitive swimmer. Is that right?
Yeah, probably not. Like you see the guys, don't you, at the Olympics, they're 6'5", they're just absolute animals. You need the levers. You could probably get away with being a breaststroker if you're a bit smaller. I don't think I was ever going to be that good. By that age, you were training sort of 20 hours a week as a swimmer. And I was never going to be doing that. I was doing sort of 10 hours of football and 10 hours of swimming. So I couldn't fit it all in. So no surprise you were very, very fit then, really, is it? So centre midfield then was where I first saw you playing. And presumably that's where, as a result of that fitness, that's where managers and coaches put you from the start, was it? Yeah, I do this. So I coach my daughter's team, and I talk to kids all the time. I was talking to a kid, there's a kid in my daughter's school who's unbelievable at football. And I don't know, he was at Ipswich, I think he's at Norwich now, but he was played in different positions. And when you play as young, you just play everywhere. Every player at an academy is generally a striker, because he's come from his team where he's the best player, and you stick him up front because he scores all your goals. So you turn up and everyone's like, oh, where do you play striker? Where do you play? Oh, striker. And then you're just like, you can't have 11 strikers. So they end up sort of figuring out, okay, we're not all going to play up front, and you certainly learn positions. So it's interesting. There was one coach when I was young who said to me, sort of, go and play left back. And I was like, I don't want to be a defender. I don't want to be a left back. But from left back, you can see the whole pitch. So you go and you play there and you think, oh, okay, why can't I pass to my left midfielder? He keeps running away from me. And then when you go back and play left midfield, you think, oh, I'm not going to run away from my left back anymore because I played left back and I've learned it. Same in centre midfield, you think, I can't find the centre midfielder's feet because he keeps running away. So then when you go back to playing these positions, you've got all this in your head. So yes, left centre midfield. I liked playing a 3 because it gave me license to run up and down. Whereas when you play in a 2, you had to be a bit more staying at home sort of thing. I like playing on the left. I like playing in the Ipswich team when we had Jim, where I sort of, when I was going forward, I was playing on the left because he'd come inside and want to get the ball. But often I'd recover to the centre because they wanted my legs in the middle. So like it was different. Like you didn't always have to have positions. And if you watch the game now, like positions are sort of a thing of the past. Like everyone sort of blurs into, and they like Kieran always said, he doesn't really call it a formation, and which is interesting now. And it's sort of progressed quite a lot of, you don't really have a set position. So yeah, I wouldn't have pigeonholed myself as a centre midfielder or a left midfielder, somewhere across the middle. I never played as an inverted off the right, although I think that would have been something fun to do, like come in and shoot in your left foot. That just wasn't a position I ever got played.
So you first crossed my radar in the Youth Cup in and specifically the 2 semi-finals with Arsenal, which I still think are probably 2 of the best matches I've ever seen. They were phenomenal matches, weren't they?
Yeah, unbelievable. Do you know, so like I said this to you before, like my memory's terrible of football matches. So the thing I remember about that, which is really weird, it's when something like, I never watched EastEnders as a kid, but someone shot Phil Mitchell, and it was like a big thing of who shot Phil Mitchell. And then, so our captain at the time, who was Guy Bonwick, was from Hertfordshire, and when we played away at Highbury, all his mates had come and they'd made this huge banner of Bonner's shot Phil Mitchell, and that's the thing I remember from going to Highbury. And we were playing against Jermaine Pennant, Ali Adier, like their team. Like if you read the team sheet back, it's like Harper, Sidwell, like it's stacked.
I can read it to you now. I can read it to you now if you like. It's Holloway, Israel, Ben Chorley, who obviously played quite regularly in league football. Ryan Gary, who I think is a coach with England now at one of the under 18 level or something like that. Justin Hoyt, Nicky Nicolou, Stephen Sidwell, Rowan Ricketts, Carlin Atonga, Jermaine Thomas, David Bentley came on as a substitute, Moritz Volz ended up at Town, Jeremy Aladair, and Jermaine Pennant. Extraordinary team, really. For that was in the first leg. Yeah, that's and because you won the game at Highbury, didn't you?
We won at Highbury, and it was awesome. Like it's amazing to say you played at Highbury. Like I remember going and I watched a Champions League game there when I think it was a semi-final between Man U and Arsenal, and you're like, oh, I've played on that pitch. Like it's just an awesome thing to have to say you played at Highbury. Yeah, but they were brilliant games, and our team wasn't bad. We if you look through our team, over half of them made it in league football.
Yeah, that's the thing.
These days doesn't happen. Like you pick out 1 or 2 from a side, but it was a good Ipswich side.
Yeah. Well, people talk about 2005 and actually winning the FA Youth Cup, but the side that you were in, which was it 2001? That was the side that Darren Kelly in goal, Arton, Will Snowden, Beavers. He played in league football, didn't he, for a few years? Westlake, Bonwick, Matt Blumfield, Darren Ambrose, Steve Burton. He also played in league football for a few years, didn't he?
But Ambrose and Bent were the 2 big names from our team.
Yeah.
Like obviously Ambrose got bought, went to Newcastle. Benty, everyone knows Benty's career better than Ambrose's probably. But yeah, like as a kid growing up, Ambrose was the best player in our team by a country mile. Like Benty was good, but just quick.
Yeah.
But then he went on to play for England and Premiership appearances through the roof. Like brilliant player. But Ambrose was the one. Ambrose was special. Like just had magic in his. Like some of the goals he could score, balance, the way he could move. Like some of the goals, if you look, like when he played for Newcastle, were brilliant. He just had problems with injury. Like he was also, I remember when he left, he was similar height to me, and then I saw him a couple of years later when he was back at the training ground. And he was like 4 inches taller. Like, and then he had back problems, and I think just like the late growth spurt and stuff like that really like hampered him at Newcastle. But they were great games. I loved that game. Like we should have won, and that was the year. Annoyingly, that was the year where we were like Will Snowden and all that were the year older. So we were all playing a year up at that stage as well. But then by the time we actually got to play in our own age group, Benty was with the first team, Ambrose was with the first team. So by the time we were the top end of the FA Youth Cup age group and you thought we could win it, the team had been diluted, and anyone who was any good was either out on loan or not playing in the youth team anymore, which was a bit of a shame.
And you won the under-17s league title that year as well, didn't you?
Yeah, at St James's Park. So that was fun to play at Newcastle. And then I remember we were sponsored by Pritt. Do you remember Pritt Stick?
Yeah.
So we've got these, I remember these tops with the Pritt Stick sort of glue. It was our sponsor. And I think they may have even come and we gave us bottles of champagne afterwards. And we were sort of 17 thinking, this is amazing, they give us champagne. Turned out it was like non-alcoholic champagne. Everyone was really excited that I just down a bottle of champagne. It's like, no, well, you haven't. It's non-alcoholic. But yeah, it was fun. Like, nice to play at St James's Park. But the one at Highbury, I think we had something like 15,000. And then when we played the home leg, we ended up kicking off late because there was so many people coming to watch. Yeah. It was just incredible for an FA Youth Cup game that all the Ipswich fans sort of pushed the kick-off back because they had to all get in.
They're brilliant. As I say, they're terrific games. I thought Jermaine Pennant was just unplayable, wasn't he, in the second leg?
He was just untouchable at that stage. Like there was some names. Bentley was one of them. There was the Ryan Gary that you mentioned. These were players that should have gone on and been. Like, I know Jermaine Pennant's career is unbelievable, but I think others should have gone on and been better. When you're in the youth team, you see loads of players like that. The ones that you just think they're so special, but converting it into a career is really difficult.
And Robert Dickinson at Town, I thought he was a terrific player at that stage as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, Dicko was one of the most skillful players I played with. He was just a bit nuts. Like, mentally, he was never going to be, like, he was never going to bed early and eating the right things and turn up for training when he should. And like, it just wasn't in him to be like that. I don't know if you could say a coach can get hold of somebody, but some people, it's just not going to happen. And yeah, talent-wise, yeah, no problem. But I'd see loads of these that you'd think, oh, he's way better than me. What am I still doing here? But they just didn't work hard enough and they didn't listen. Yeah, it's weird. Like, I think there's a lot, and now I do coaching and things, it comes up. You just think, like, you think so many people are so talented, and you just think, why can't they just turn up on time, or why can't they just train hard, or why can't they? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not the bits that were a given. You'd think I'd love to have had some of the abilities that you see. Yeah, turns out that isn't just a given for everyone. Hard work and turning up, like that's something that you've got to put in.
Yes, there's a lot more to it than talent. Yeah, as you say. Yeah, Rich.
The kind of breakthrough moment for you in the first team happens to coincide with this really challenging time for the club because there's the relegation from the Premier League. We're in the UEFA Cup through the Fair Play League, and I think you're on the bench away in Sarted. I'm looking at your face like, do you remember that one?
I do remember that because we've done all of pre-season. I've done quite well in pre-season. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going with the first team away from home. This is awesome, like really excited. Matt Richards, I think, gets his first start, youngest player to ever play in Europe, Ipswich, all of this. And I'm not on the bench. I mean, I'm just in the stand. So I'm like, why have I come all the way here to sit in the stand? And I was raging afterwards. And you don't think you deserve a place in the first team, but I've done all of pre-season. I've done really well. And then I don't remember, we had a player called Ulrich Le Pen.
Yes.
So he was still there and he'd come in and hadn't done anything. They pushed him out pre-season. He hadn't trained at all. We rock up and I think I might be wrong, but I think he either plays or comes on.
Yeah, this is Luxembourg. This is in Luxembourg, isn't it?
And I'm just thinking, why? Like, they're pushing this guy out, blah, blah, blah. Turns out afterwards, I speak to somebody who says, oh, they had someone there watching who just wanted to see that he was still fit and he could still play. We wanted to move him on. And it's like the first time in football I was just like, what, you don't just put the best team out for every game to win a football match? Like,
yeah.
It was the sort of, it wasn't the moment the penny dropped because later on as things sort of got more frustrating, it happened more. But in that instance, I just thought, oh, okay, we're playing someone so someone else can see him so that the club can get him off the wage bill. And I was just like, that's really odd. Like, I'd always just thought you put your best team out, or if someone did well in training, they'd get a spot. And you just sort of thought, oh, this is a bit odd. Like, he's getting a start because they want to get rid of him. And I'm like, that's sort of counterintuitive where my mind works. Like, if you don't want him anymore, why are you playing him? But yeah, it was sort of a bit of a wake-up moment, that one.
there's a quote that we've got, and we'll put it to you, about being in the right place in the right time in respect of the opportunities afforded to young players because of administration. But you are there through George I think you were on the bench for the Grimsby game, which is Burley's last game. Tony Mowbray, Brian Klug come in on a caretaker basis, and then Joe Royle. Talk to us about that as a young player, trying to get your head around those kind of really big moments for a club.
So you just don't care.
Okay.
So I'm
Easy
young.
answer.
I'm young. I'm just buzzing to be anywhere near the first team. I've seen Benty and Ambrose do it. They're way better than me. But like, I'm thinking, okay, but they keep asking me to train with them. I keep doing well in training. I'm playing well in reserve games. It's nice to be involved. Then the club go in, they call you in. They're like, will anyone defer their wages? And the older ones sort of have a grumble, and this all happens. And then people start leaving. And you just sort of think, okay, like, you don't really know anything of it. Like, administration was just a new thing. You didn't, like, the play. I don't know if the older players will obviously think more of it, and as you go through, you get more. But when I'm like that, I'm just thinking, okay, turn up for training, train hard, go home. And then, so Mogger and Brian played me when we had a chance to at the end of the season. Then, obviously, by the time we came back, Joe had come. We'd had to clean house a bit, and then a lot of players had left. And I wouldn't have got a chance if that hadn't happened. So, like, administration was a good thing for me. Like, I got to play because we were balancing the book somewhat. But it worked out well. We signed good players. We had Benty coming through, myself, Matt Richards. Like, we had a solid youth, and we had some old heads that were good. And we had Joe, who was brilliant. And Willie Donachie, I have to say, Willie was awesome as well, like a really good coach, and they sort of worked off each other really well together. And yeah, under Joe, we were just a really good side, and it was enjoyable. Like, we had some good players. We were still, if you look at the team when Joe came in, he was still unfortunately like letting players go because they were balancing in the books. And then he got sort of a settled team for 2 years, and that was 2 years of the playoffs. And that's just sort of how it worked. But for me, as administration or this or that, just didn't even feature in my head. I was like, people are going, great, more chance for me getting a game. You didn't think like, and you don't learn this until you get older. You don't know the sad things like people losing their jobs, or there's guys who have companies that, because local companies look out for Ipswich and help them with things. You don't realise that these companies are then getting 10p on a pound of the debt they're owed. You just don't. No one explains that to you at sort of 17, 18, 19. And like, ignorance is bliss. It's probably nice that I didn't know. Otherwise, I'd be thinking, I'm working for someone who's not treating people right. Do you know what I mean? Like, none of that happens. You just go, oh, look, some of the good players are leaving. I might get to play. And then when you get to play, you get excited and you're happy. And then you probably end up earning more and having a better career. And you just think, oh, brilliant. And you don't know any of that other stuff. Well, certainly at 19, you don't know that. And I think during football, you see young players who, they're better when they're young because ignorance is bliss. You don't know all the other rubbish stuff that goes on. And that sort of just comes later when you realise like what's actually happened.
Yeah, there's a bigger, wider world out there, and that stress and pressure, and probably quite fairly, it sounds like the club, or maybe your mindset, kept you away from that, which is probably for the best. You mentioned Willie Donachie and Joe Royle. Phil Ham here has provided me a quote from Joe Royle to describe you as 3 lungs. Did he take a shine to you?
Yeah. So you play in teams and you just fit, and I just fitted in that team. The way that we played, we needed legs around Jim. Jim was a brilliant footballer, came to like Liverpool Academy, just like total football. He loved it and wanted the ball, and just ran the dressing room, ran the team, and it was just brilliant playing in that. And when you're young and you someone like that, you just say yes, Jim, and you just get on and you just like, you know your job. If it means running a bit harder to do bits that other people can't do, that's fine, and that suited me. And I think it's like better play, like so Lundberg, for instance, at Arsenal. I always looked at Lundberg and thought he was brilliant, and then he went to other teams and he was rubbish. And his ability was running, and he'd make really good runs at really good times, and he was a good finisher. Once you got through, he would score. But all the skill was around him and the ability. But there is a skill in just timing runs, and in that team, I knew that if I made runs, the ball would come to me. So most of my finishes were one-touch finishes because I could just make runs knowing that I had good players all around me. And then other things that I had in that team I really enjoyed was I had Benty, who I played with for lots of years, from probably 13. So I could turn balls into corners blind, knowing that he would be making that run, because that's a relationship that built up over long periods of time. So yeah, and Joe, I think, saw that how me, Richo, and Benty could play together. He saw that I could add things that would help the team in terms of legs, like Darren Curry when he came into the side. Like, he was super fit, but wasn't quick, and running wasn't his strength. His strength was skill on the ball, similar to Jim. Even Jammer could run all day, but didn't run that much, but was very good on the ball. So it was just, it was a place where running fitted, and I could do that.
Towards the end of the season, a few more appearances, and there is, I mean, you've mentioned this midfield that Joe Royle had got, and Matt Holland leaves at the end of this season, but Tommy Miller's in there. You mentioned Magilton and Jermaine Wright, but this 3-0 win in that 02-03 season, your kind of first proper season, where we end up narrowly missing out on the playoffs. You've got a feature role in that one, but that 3-0 game, any memories of that?
Memory of? So, funnily enough, I commentated on Portsmouth recently.
You did,
so
yeah.
We just played the Portsmouth game. So I thought, I think I played Portsmouth a few times. So I'd had a look. And yes, a strong Portsmouth team, but they were promoted, weren't they?
They were on the beach, weren't they?
And all I remember is we battered them. But I was sitting there, one of my first games, I was sitting there thinking, what's this guy doing? There's a guy on the Cobbold side, on the Cobbold boxes, for the whole game with a cowbell, just walking along the boarding, ringing this bell the whole time. Like, turns out, I think his name's John Portsmouth. He changed his name to, and he's relatively famous, but I didn't know at the time. He just walks along ringing this bell, and the stewards are standing there, and then the police come, and they're all trying to get him off. But they can't go on for health and safety reasons. So as long as he doesn't leave, he's fine. So as much as it's a 3-0 win, I remember just watching this guy with tattoos and dreadlocks and a cowbell, just walking along ringing his bell for 90 minutes. And then I got on, make an appearance, but I don't it doesn't stick in my memory of anything other than just this madman ringing a bell. Yeah,
it was the beginning of what will be a pretty decent season for you coming up. Over to Phil.
Yeah, John Portsmouth Football Club Westwood. That's the guy's name. He was still getting himself banned in pre-season this year as well. I noticed before we played them. So 03-04. You've got the number 33 shirt at this stage. You weren't being offered a shirt in the first 11, or you're quite happy with 33.
33 worked fine. I was never one was like, oh, can I have this number? Can I have that? The numbers don't mean anything, especially these days. It's not like 1 to 11 is the starting lineup anymore.
Yeah, and you were still kind of on the cusp, weren't you? You had sub appearances against Coventry and Wigan. Do you remember those? No, and then full debut in a 2-1 loss to West Ham.
Yeah, no memory of that either. I remember training around that time and getting into the team and feeling like I should be playing. I went back really fit that pre-season, just thinking if you're in good shape, it always starts you off well. And they'd gone really well. Pre-season was good. The team was looking really strong. I could see spaces in it where I thought I'd be useful. Just had to wait my time. And then once I was in the team, the results went well, and I kept playing really.
So pre-season, as someone who kind of, you talked about your running and your fitness. You were probably a player who quite enjoyed pre-season, weren't you, compared to some of your teammates?
So nobody enjoys pre-season. It's just the time where you just batter your body just so that then you're in shape for the year. The best pre-season we did a couple under Joe where he decided that we would do 8 o'clock swimming, then 10 o'clock running, and then 3 o'clock football. And some of the guys couldn't swim, but I was like, this is amazing. And they were like, sort of, okay, we're going to go for 2 lengths now. And it's like, I dive in, and obviously I'd done the years of swimming. So it's like 2 lengths is sort of 30 seconds work. But turns out it was sort of 2 minutes work for a lot of the guys. So by the time we got to the running, and then Willie took a special group for wits down in the shallow end, the ones that couldn't even, and it's just it was just bizarre. I was like, this is pre-season, and it's like when you swim at school as kids, and there's a little group that can't swim yet. So there were some appalling swimmers. And to be fair, even the good swimmers weren't particularly good. So like they'd all knackered themselves out by the time we got to run. And by the time we were doing football training 3 PM, most of them were on their knees. So I guess it was easier to look good then when everyone else is sort of crawling.
So your first goal against Gillingham in a 4-3 defeat. Do you remember that as well?
Yeah. I just remember being annoyed we'd lost. I think it was a bit of a
back and forth game.
Yeah, it was a weird game, and we shouldn't have lost it. And I think Joe was really angry. He doesn't often get angry. I think he was really angry. So yeah, I don't remember my goal. Just remember like being disappointed afterwards. Just thinking, well, I'd like to like score a winner or something, because every night when you play football, I don't care if you're a kid or you're a professional footballer, you sit up the night before thinking like about the goal you're going to score or how you're going to score it, and so they all go through your head, but they're never like the third goal in a 4-3 loss. Do you know what I mean? That's not how the dream runs out the night before. So as much as it was good and like it's nice to sort of get off your mark, I just remember being grumpy as everyone else was, thinking, like we didn't win.
You talk about Joe being angry. Joe, I remember him around the training ground. I interviewed him once, and sort of on the way through from reception, he kind of stuck his head in what used to be the table tennis room and just, had a bit of banter with whoever was playing there, passed someone else, bit of banter with them. It was just constantly sort of topping up the mood the whole time. Is that how he was around you lot?
Yeah, he was different every day. So he was really different. Like he'd come in, like he'd be really happy, he'd be really grumpy. Like he generally was on a high and everything was positive. But yeah, he could go like most managers. Like he didn't. There were certain like other managers he didn't like, certain referees he really didn't like, and certain performances he didn't like. If you weren't doing what he wanted you to do, he wasn't happy. And everyone sort of knew what they were supposed to do, so it was quite easy for him to pull you up if you weren't doing it. And then so in terms of, he was the good cop and the bad cop. Like Willie wouldn't say anything. Willie would work on everyone as a coach on the training field. So like he wouldn't often speak like to a team or to everybody. It would be more individuals with Willie, like one-on-one, like small groups. He'd take the defenders, the attackers. But in terms of Joe, like he would lift you up and put you down and everything in between. I do probably think he was generally positive. But yeah, there was times where you knew you didn't do what he wanted.
Because I mean, training. Willie Donaghy took training, didn't he? And Joe tended to sort of stand on the side, didn't he? Isn't that how it tended to work with them?
Yeah, Joe would watch. Like he'd have again moments where he'd sort of pull everyone in and talk to everyone. But yeah, Willie took training day to day. Good training, like some of the most enjoyable training sessions I had throughout my career. Really, like we did a lot of attacking play. Like they just both wanted to score goals. Like some of our games, we had a 6-4 against Crewe. Like we had 4-3 against Gillingham. We just had goals. Like he just sort of thought, well, we had Sheffield and Bentley who were going to get 20 plus each, which doesn't often happen in the Championship. It's 2 strikers in the same team with 40 goals. And he was just like, well, there's our strength. Like let's just score more than everyone else. So we tried to just score. Like we were free to run. Like I was free to run forward and join in. Like I had to get back, but the play was forward, I could join in the play. Like I don't think at that stage I'd ever thought about like protecting anyone, or like if it was forward, you got forward. Do you know what I mean? And it was nice to play in that, and it was really fun. Like we had some amazing results and some brilliant games. Like an enjoyable time to watch Ipswich. I think so anyway.
Definitely. And you got a goal to win to earn a point at Coventry in the January of that season, coming off the bench with Tommy Miller. Do you remember that goal as well?
Yes, I slightly remember that one better because it's obviously a bit more meaningful. Again, I'd probably just been annoyed I didn't start, so like it would have been nice to get on. And it's more like when you score as a sub, you're not celebrating thinking brilliant. You're more thinking, should have started me. Like honestly, you score as a sub and everyone's celebrating, everyone's really happy, but you're secretly just really happy because you're thinking, well, I should have played then, shouldn't I? Prove my point, and then you're hoping you play the next one. But yeah, Tommy was a brilliant player. Like I like playing with Tommy. Very similar to myself. Like he was a very running based player, good finisher. Arrived at good times, like balls would drop, he'd have a touch and score, and then obviously a brilliant penalty taker.
And then you scored an equaliser away at Sheffield United live on Sky to help us into probably our last successful match on Sky to get us into the playoffs.
So I do remember this one clearly because it was right in front of the Ipswich fans, and they'd put the Ipswich fans, the lower tier, I don't know why, they were obviously repairing it or something, so there was no one in the lower tier. And I remember just pictures of this where I'm celebrating to nobody. And everyone's like, why is he so excited to be celebrating to nobody? And it's not, because everyone's up in the top tier. So there's all the Ipswich fans and it's right in front of them. And it's brilliant. I didn't have too many goals like this where I was slid through and the goalie's gone really big and really early, like Schmeichel style, but left a massive gap between his legs. And I see goals where you just shoot and it goes through the goalie's leg. But there are ones where I saw there's Michael Owen on Soccer Box where he actually talks about how it's one of his favourite finishes, and he waits for him to open his leg and he puts the ball through the goalie. Well, I was never that good and I never really thought like that. But this time I did, like he just came really big. And it was quite an obvious one just to roll it between his legs sort of thing. So yeah, I enjoyed that goal, and it was in front of our fans. And I think I just went a bit mental, like I just started screaming. But like it was just because I enjoyed it. And at the time, Ipswich and Sheffield United like hated each other. It was like more of a rival than probably anyone else, even than Norwich at the time. And Joe also hated, might be the wrong word, but didn't like Neil Warnock. So there was like the battle of, you don't like Neil Warnock, we hate Sheffield United, I'm in front of the Ipswich fans, like it's just a cool goal to score, and it all sort of, I just went nuts because it was just a good one to do. And then obviously I know that the manager's going to be happy with me because he likes us scoring against Sheffield United, and it was just good. Like it was one of my favourite goals in terms of what it meant, and like you said, it helped us into the playoffs.
And then we come to the playoffs. West Ham, Darren Bent puts us 1-0 up in the first leg. Do you remember the first leg well?
No, like it's a blur. So the playoffs are a massive blur just for the fact that they were early in my career, and by that point of the season, I was shattered. Like it was the end of my first season, and it was just like it just been nuts. And I think I remember someone asking me if I was tired. I was like, "Oh no, I'm fine," because you're not going to go, "No, I don't want to play at Upton Park," or you're never not going to want to play. And Pardew again was a manager that Joe didn't particularly like.
Neither did we.
Unless you were his team, he wasn't a likable manager. And they were a very good team. Like I don't know if you've got their team, but their team was strong. And I only realised recently when I read it back how quite a strong team that they had. Like I think Michael Carrick played in that game.
And Matthew Etherington scored in the away leg, didn't he? And Christian Daly was in that team. Yeah, it was a Premier League team, wasn't it? Really, in waiting at that point, I think.
Yeah. A home game. I just remember it being a particularly tough game. Like I don't think I remember coming away from it not being happy how I personally played, although the result was okay. And then I remember the training and then building it up to being like how it was going to be a massive game. And yeah, it really was at their place. Like Upton Park, that's probably the first time I went somewhere and was like, wow, this is quite tasty, really. Like there was a lot of people there. They were just mental that night. It was, and we didn't play well, and yeah, we lost it at their place, didn't we?
Yeah.
And then I had a volley. I remember this because this is just people have reminded me this forever and still do. I don't know, but I had a volley in the last few minutes. It comes out to me. I'll have a touch and volley, and it's as good a volley as I've hit, and it hits sort of like the crossbar and the post at the same time, and comes out. And I think on away goals, I think that's probably enough for us to go through, isn't it? So like I went. And personally, like this sounds silly, but at that point I hadn't got a new contract, I don't think. And the bonuses for that season, if you go into the Premiership, were pro rata. And I think like even at that stage, I hadn't worked it out. But then afterwards, I think it was, I don't know what it was, but it was per game. And I think I played in like a high percentage of games. So I was like, well, I think my brother or someone had gone, do you know that you would have won? And I was like, no, I don't, but that's not cheered me up. Like, we just got knocked out. I'm not a Premiership player, and now you're just telling me that I could have had a load more money. So, like, that was just like a really depressing summer, to be honest.
Yeah.
And then to top it off, I don't know if you know, but they actually bricked our window after the game. So the West Ham fans threw a brick through our window, and then they reckoned it was going to be 3 hours by the time they came and fixed it. So we drove home down the A12 with like just a smashed window. So there was just like cold air blowing in the bus for like the most depressing journey home from West Ham you've ever seen on a team bus. And bizarrely, we said goodbye and we didn't see each other till pre-season that night. It was just done. See you later. It was really odd. It was like, oh yeah, we didn't do it. Bye. See you in. We'll send out a letter about see you in June. It was really like, it was a really weird end to sad ending to the season.
Yeah, because it's real anti-climax to the whole season, losing and then the journey back and then just sort of parting. Yeah, I mean it's difficult, isn't it, to kind of cope with defeat in that way, really, isn't it? And what do you do? But you, of course, you did. Although as a team you didn't have much to celebrate, you won Player of the Year. Yes,
which was nice. But like again, it just comes off the back of not. Like, I think I got that award before the playoffs. I think.
It would have been
a high then. It was brilliant, but then that all just blurs into nothingness when you don't achieve anything. So it was like, yes, that's a good personal achievement, and it was brilliant, and the do was nice, and everything like that. And then you just get knocked out of West Ham, and your brother tells you should have had more money, and you couldn't do the Premiership, and it was cold coming home, and then you don't say goodbye, you just sort of disappear, and it just sort of you forget about that. Like you don't think, oh, I had a good season. You just think we didn't do what. And every week it was this is what we were going for. We were going to get promoted. So it all just isn't really worth anything at the end of it. Like you didn't do what you set out to do.
Rich?
It's interesting to hear the context behind your side of the memories. As a supporter, I remember that West Ham night being really nasty as a spectator as well. And we've talked about that crossbar / post moment a few times as well. It's one of those, as supporters, you look back and think these marginal moments that went the wrong way for us. But we do regroup and come back even stronger for the 04-05 season. And it's interesting to hear that we kind of, everyone was left to get on with it, and back we come, but we start the season reasonably well. And again, there's this moment that Phil has purposefully asked me to remind you of, and it may be one that you don't recall, but League Cup tie against Brentford, Lewis Price in goal is about to score, and I think you maybe just make sure it gets over the line for him.
Never getting over the line.
Never. Not?
No, unfortunately I don't. All I remember is that it's not getting over the line, and it's one more goal on my record, and no one is, so I don't care.
Goal bonus, yeah.
Like at the time, the ball's going towards the goal, and I don't particularly know if there's anyone around me or behind me, and I'm just making sure we score. Afterwards, I did look at it and just think I could have had a look, probably even if there was anyone, shielded it and let Pricey score, but it wasn't to be. Gutted Pricey.
we obviously wish him all the best as well. For his recovery, and but yeah, that's Phil was very bitter about that one. I can't remember that one, so I don't think I was in Ipswich at that point. But what I do remember though is we kind of alluded to it earlier on. There's this kind of run of goals scoring that you go on kind of part way through the season, and it's arriving at the box at the right time. You mentioned it before. Is that something that you purposely worked on and improved on? Because there are goals here against Leicester and Watford. There's a 5-1 against Sheffield United where you just appear in the box in exactly the right place, pull back, and I'm not going to say it's a tap-in, but these are finishes that happen quite routinely for you. Was it something that you worked on as an individual and as a team?
So we did a lot of finishing in training, and the arriving on time, it's a skill similar to any other sort of skill. Like you can practice a step over, you can practice, your first touch, different things. It's just a skill, and it's a skill that suited me. One, I could run, and two, when the play's on the other side of the pitch, it was easy for me to know when things were going to happen. Like I know it sounds strange, but like if you watch, and I'm not comparing myself to good like Conte or anyone like that, but if you watch Conte play and when he picks up second balls, and the way you just see like two defenders or go up for a header, and he picks the second ball up every time, and they're like, oh, he's just so good. He just, the ball just drops to him, or he's just faster, or he's not. It's how he reads it. So I can, and it sounds really simple, and you think. why can't everyone do it? And you see ones where there's someone struggling and they're just about to cross the ball and keep it in. Well, you know that cross is only going to the near post because the guy's falling over as he's crossing it. And so you have to make a run to the near post because that's the only place the ball's going to be. And then again, the relationship of having played the year before with probably this very similar team, you know there were times where if people had time, they'd cut the ball back. So you'd arrive onto the penalty spot instead of running through the 6-yard box because everyone else, like they were worried about our strikers. So there was a little bit of space. So they'd drop slightly deeper and the ball could be pulled back and you'd have like a, I don't know, 15-yard, 10-yard, like you say, tap in. But they're not always the easiest when they're coming back to you like that. Like it's just you're more just controlling them because the pace is normally on the cross and you've just got to direct it to corners. So yeah, it was a skill that I liked. I could see where balls were dropping. I could see when to come and get on the end of things. Just then like another skill of having some people have a good delivery on corners. Some people have, good first touch. It's just like that. It's just a skill, one that suited me that I could do.
And there's a really neat goal after 40 seconds at Leicester where I think Bent goes in for a shot, it rebounds out to you, and you're on the edge and you dink it over the goalkeeper and 2 players on the line. Do you remember that one? I kind of think as a footballer, like what is going through your mind apart from get it on target, I guess? Is it that simple?
So I remember 2 things. One, my best mate's a Leicester fan, and he was at Leicester University, and his dad was a Leicester fan and used to drive from Clapton every week up to Leicester to watch them play. So I knew that they were there. So I was desperate to score. And at that point, like you said, I'd on a run of games where I was very confident. And you're just a different player when you're confident. So all this had happened and it sort of, I think it bounces in front of me. And like you said, there's lots of people all doing things in front of me, but the keeper doesn't seem to be there and they're just defenders. So my main thing was just height. So instead of being flat, you just had to loop it so that it would sort of drop into the goal. And yeah, at the time, like it was just sort of, okay, drop it over their heads, side foot volley. And it was like, when you're confident things are good, like things just become clearer and easier. And I remember it being particularly easy. And like you said, that's one I've seen back. And I thought, well, that's quite a good finish. Didn't know I could do that. But like at the time, it wasn't, it didn't seem anything particularly tricky, although it was sort of a trickier finish. And then I remember afterwards going to see my mate in the players' lounge thinking this would be brilliant because it's my best mate's team and he just scored against them. He was 10 minutes late, so he didn't know that I'd scored until after.
Oh, no, he missed it.
He didn't even know he scored the first goal. He was like, I thought it was 1-0. So yeah, they all missed it, so it wasn't worth it anyway.
No, never mind. At least I think we got a point.
We got a point.
Day.
It's a tough place to go. Walker Stadium wasn't good. It's good to get a point there.
I mean, we mentioned the kind of goal scoring run. There's an England under-21 call-up that precedes that run where I think you purposefully choose not to go to camps, don't you, and to focus on your league form. Is that right? Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, so Joe said to me, I think you should stay and just concentrate, because I'd gone on a couple and they take quite a big squad and I hadn't played. I hadn't played in any of them, like just was a squad member in the stand. So like, I'd gone to sort of strange, I can't remember even where I went, but we travelled away and sat in the stand, travelled away, sat in the stand. And I'm not gonna lie, the players were brilliant. And I thought to myself, like, I'm not playing. Like, I knew that I wasn't going to play. Like, I was going there to be, and weirdly in training, like, they were a nice bunch of lads, like, very, very good players. And like, I was fitting quite well with the lads. Like, we did, like, they were table tennis tournaments that I was good at. Jermaine Pennant was there, Colin Cole, Dean Ashton. Like the squad was ridiculous. And like just silly things. Like I remember this because you don't remember many things when you go with the under-21s. Like it's quite an experience. So we were just doing like the silly keep ball where it's just sort of you're in a circle and there's 2 in the middle and you try and do it. And England, they were trying to do it differently slightly, where they put one person in the middle with the 2 attackers, and you got a point every time you combined off the middle person. So the 2 in the middle are just trying to get it back, and it normally just goes around the edges and occasionally through the 2. But this one, you were trying to get it into the middle to get a point as well. Like quite a cool drill. Like haven't really done it since, but anyway. And I just put the bib behind my back, so that they thought I was the guy in the middle. So they passed me the ball, and I just sort of chucked him and was out of the circle. And like just little things, like just messing around. And Peter Taylor was the manager, and he just sort of said, "Oh, like we need people like you. It's good to have characters around the dressing room." Like, and I just messed around a lot, really. And he seemed to like it. And so I think I was going to get called up to be part of the squad and be a good character around the place. And then when Joe said, "Look, we really want to concentrate and get promoted this year," blah, 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 I sort of thought to myself, look, it's nice to be a good character, but like my manager here wants me here more. I'm never playing there, so maybe Joe's right. And to be honest, until now, I've never looked back on it and thought, oh, should I have just kept going? Or, if you ask me now, I still don't know really if it was right or wrong. But yeah, Joe wanted me there. And to be honest, I was getting paid from Ipswich and he was the boss. And he'd never said anything to me that I'd ever doubt. Like, he'd always looked after me, I thought. And like, I just thought if he said, look, it's best to stay here, then it's best to stay here. So that's what I did.
And I think that the timing kind of works out, because I think those call-ups are around October time, and then that run of goal-scoring form that we talk about happens almost straight afterwards, doesn't it? So I guess there is a performance benefit that comes from it, perhaps, that you can see. But
yeah, I agree. Maybe like I said, Joe. I don't think Joe ever did anything that would like. He would always try to help me and try to push me on. So like, it was only if he did it, it was for a reason, and that's I think why I probably just said at the time, yeah, let's do it. Yeah, you're the boss.
Indeed, and he's got that wisdom, hasn't he? Of you're still quite young at this point, aren't you? I think you're 20, 21 at this point as well. So
yeah,
a lot of choices and big moments to be put in at such a young age, and none bigger than facing off to Karen Pickering in a swim off and a penalty shootout. How did this come about? This is a strange one.
Yeah, so I'll get stick for this because apparently this is the only story that I ever tell anyone. Like, I never talk about football or anything I did. I'm just talk about this swimming. It was bizarre. Jim had gone on a fun run with Karen Pickering pre-season. No, before pre-season. Then we'd come back pre-season, the Commonwealth Games were on, and we're sitting. We'd done our morning swim, we'd done our 10 o'clock run, and then we were sitting after lunch at Holbrook School, and we had like our own little dormitory thing where we just sat and watched telly and got a massage and waited to do our football in the afternoon. So we're sitting there, and he's gone, "Oh, that's Karen Pickering. I did a fun run with her. She's from Ipswich." I was like, "Oh, that's nice. Like, I'd beat her." And the boys absolutely hammered me. They were like, they weren't happy about it at all. Because also I was obviously young at the time, and they thought I was a bit chirpy anyway, I think. Because I wasn't chirpy, but like I just thought I generally had an opinion on most things. And not everyone is a big fan of that. But so I had especially when they're senior pros and know your place. So yeah, I had an opinion on things, and then when I sort of chirped in and said I would beat a Commonwealth or Olympic swimmer, they weren't having it really. So then I thought nothing more of it. Like, they hammered me a bit and blah blah. And then like a few weeks later, she rocks up with medals, like Commonwealth medals. I don't think Olympic, but the medals that she's won, which is an amazing career. She was a brilliant swimmer. She rocks up to the training ground with Jim, and then sort of says, "Oh, you think you can beat me then?" And Jim's there, and all the boys are there, and I'm just thinking, "Oh, they're waiting just to like." And Jim set it all up just to get me, sort of thing. And I assume they all think, "Oh, now this is the point where he backs down and sort of says, oh no, I was." And I just said, "Yeah, I think over a short distance, because obviously she was a long 400 meters, so like she did longer distances. I said, just over a sprint, probably take you." And then half of them laugh, and half of them are just sort of gobsmacked, and it's just a bit awkward for a minute. And then I was like, "Well, show me the medals anyway." So then we looked for her medals, which was nice. And it was all sort of quiet thing. And then Jim's like egging it on, going, "Oh, well, let's go and swim and race." And I don't know how it comes about, but we agreed to a race. And then, there's some sort of race where Sky Sports then get hold of it. And then it's live on Sky Sports. And the most annoying thing is it gets on Sky Bet. And no one tells me, because I would have had all my wages on me winning that race on Sky Bet. And I think I had terrible odds. And this is the guy where he goes, "Oh, and I think he's done a bit of water polo at England schools." That's where this quote's come from. And yeah, it's just really, and it's one of my best moments also because he then says, because I had a big dressing gown on, and before swimming races you often wore like a robe sort of thing, but I just had this, and there on the Sky Sports there's a quote saying Ian West, or he says, "Oh, and I've just seen Ian Westlake walking around looking like Rocky Balboa in his dressing gown," and no one's ever described me as Rocky Balboa before, so I was sort of chuffed just with that. And the penalty bit, I didn't know anything about the penalty bit because obviously I was playing in the game, so I couldn't do penalties at half time. I think after I beat her, they sort of, I don't know how it worked, but they were like, "Oh, you know, she can get her own back and take some penalties or something." So then that was sort of like, I think, a bit of an afterthought. But yeah, the race was fun. Like I won comfortably.
Was it 5:53 1/100ths of a second?
Yeah, like half a second.
Half a second.
Like, in over 50 meters, it's quite a lot.
Yeah, well,
5.121 seconds. There you go.
Yeah.
To be fair, if we'd done a third length, she'd have beaten me. I was on my knees at that point. I'd given it everything.
I was going to say, I bet that didn't shut up Jim, though, did it?
No, of course it doesn't. Nothing. You can't shut him up. It's impossible. But it was fun. Like I did love it, and she got me like a really cool speedo suit, and I've still got it somewhere with Westy on it and speedo. Like, on the chest.
Nice.
So like at the time, I think they're banned now. It's one of like they set all the Olympic records. They banned the suits because they were too fast. So yeah, it's quite cool. I've got that tucked away upstairs. So
nice.
Nice to have that as well.
Positive memory, because going back to the football, I mean, it's another playoff defeat to West Ham. It's kind of a flip round because we have a really good performance at Upton Park and come back from 2-0 down and draw 2-2, and then we don't really show up, do we, for the second leg? And again, it's Pardew who gets to celebrate. I mean, do you have any recollection of that one? Was it similar feelings, I guess, to the previous season, but even more disappointment because we've been top of the league for quite a while, haven't we?
They were better in the playoffs, and we didn't. I took the defeat for the playoffs like we knew. I not knew we were going to lose, but like you could feel it wasn't right. They beat us, and they beat us well at Hard Place, and it was disappointing. They knew how to play us. They'd go man to man on Jim, and they'd stop us playing, and Jim used to make everything tick. So Pardew would ruin Jim, and then they'd make us play difficult way of playing. But we should have just got in the top three. Like that was where we killed it. Like like the disappointment was not finishing second. It was nothing to do with losing in the playoffs. Like we should have been in the top two that year. That was our best chance. We were good. Like we were really good at points of that season. We had like that run before Christmas, and then after Christmas we had sort of tougher. We didn't do as well after Christmas, but we were still there or thereabouts. And I think it was Wigan, wasn't it?
Wigan, that 1-0 away game.
And who did they have?
Ellington and Roberts.
They had two strike, and we had Benty and Shefke, and it was like, And then who was the other team? Was it Sunderland?
Yeah. Sunderland managed by Mick McCarthy and Wigan managed by Paul Jewell.
Oh wow! How was that? I didn't know that till now. Well, they were tough, and it was like a Jimmy Bullard. Like that was a good Wigan side, but they were good teams. But like, just felt like we should have done it that season. Like there were points in that season where we were really going well. I know we had some losses that against weaker teams.
Going. I think were the two.
There was two defeats in a week, wasn't there, against Watford?
Two bad ones, and I remember Joe being not happy those weeks. Like really ripping into us. Like and we threw it away like in a really short period. There was, like you said, there must have been those two. Like I don't remember the game specifically. I just remember like a real down bit, and then not really ever going in the playoffs. Like we just felt like it was promotion automatic or bust, and we hadn't quite. And when you get West Ham again, I think they were probably late into the playoffs. We were third, were we? And they were sixth. And the team that finishes sixth in the playoffs, the amount of times they get through it, because they just come in with a bit of momentum. And so, and I think then West Ham get promoted that year, did they?
Yeah, they did. Yes, And there was a game at Leeds, wasn't there, right at the end of the season, I think, when I think if we'd have, that would probably have got us, I don't think it was the last week of the season, but it was the penultimate week. I think that would have given us a bigger chance of finishing in the top two. And I think Darren Curry missed a chance right at the end. And
right in the last, I remember that. Yeah, like they all sort of come flooding back now that you say.
Sorry, Ian.
Waves of disappointment.
I know.
Yes, they were. Yeah, like that was a. I think the other one hurt more because I feel like we were on an up going into the other one, whereas that one I felt like we were already on a down going into it. I know it sounds silly because you're in the playoffs, but like I felt we'd lost. I felt like we'd lost second automatic, and then playing the playoff after that is just harder. I think that often happens. That team that just miss out, it's hard to pick yourself up and go. Like you sort of. There were points where I think we thought we'd done it that year. Like we were really good. And then, obviously, games just slipped away.
Yeah, I think we felt exactly the same. Phil, back to you.
And you mentioned sort of the end of the previous season, everyone just drifting away at the end of the season. Players literally drifted away at the end of that season, didn't they? Benty went, Shefke went, Tommy Miller went, Kelvin Davis went. The heart was ripped out of that team, wasn't it, really?
Yes. And, Joe was cross about that. But, like, it was difficult. And like, it was difficult because the players that came in then didn't really stand a chance. That was what was a killer. Like, players came in, like, we had Sam Parker and Nicky Forster come in that summer. Both nice guys and good footballers. But, like, they were coming in against Benty and Shefke, and I just think, like, whatever they'd done, they weren't going to live up to Benty and Shefke. Like, people love both of them for different reasons. One's an academy boy who's going to go on and play for England and is just rapid and goal machine, and like people love Benty for what he was. And Shefke was like a cult hero with his big dive, and he's like, he wasn't a wonderful footballer, but he was just like what he did was brilliant. And for those 2 seasons, he was just on fire. Like he was pushing people, he was running through 3 of them, he was smashing. He smashed a volley in. But if you told me Shefke would ever score a goal like that, you'd have gone no, like no chance. Like Jim called him trampoline foot because when you passed it to him, it bounced off him. Like he couldn't control it. Like. But it wasn't like Shefke was a beast and he was unbelievable for us. Like, unbelievable. Like, you could have... There were times where the form he was on and how he was playing, you'd have picked him over any centre-forward I played with for those periods. But sometimes you just looked at him and you just thought, how? Like, he's massive. Like, he's too big. He's too strong. How he runs for 90 minutes. But, yeah, he was just awesome. And then... So they leave. And then... I just think, like, I felt sorry for Fozzie and Sam Parkin because they were really good players, And in training and things, you thought good. But, like, within a few games, like, not on his back, but, like, you just didn't feel like they were the same. Like, Fozzie plays on the shoulder and is offside a lot. That's just how he is. I'm sure the fans remember him being offside a lot. But he went after us. He went to Brighton and scored, like, boatloads of goals and then went on from that and scored loads of goals. He plays on the shoulder... And he might be offside 5 times, but then he'll get you a goal on the 6th, and he's a deep, like, good player. And I just remember after like the first couple of games, people were groaning like every time he was offside. And it was like he's not Benty. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it was a little bit of that. And then Sam Parkin, I remember people groaning when like he's not getting up and winning the header. Like they were like, oh, big man, but he wasn't a big man who was going to win headers. Like he was really technical. Like he liked the ball into his feet. He'd link play. But I think people thought, we'd signed a big guy who just flicks the ball on sort of thing. Like Shefke would win every header, wouldn't he, when it came like bash people around. Like that wasn't Sam. So then there was a little bit of when I felt for Sam slightly when people were like, oh, he hasn't won a header. And I just felt like your team, and especially teams under Joe, everything was about your strikers. He was a striker. He set the team up to score goals. He loved his strikers. And I just felt that period was just a bit sticky, really. Just like it was never going to work. Like people didn't take to them like they did Benty and Shefke. They weren't ever going to be the same as them, and I think people were looking for him to be the same.
And eventually, of course, he brought in Alan Lee, didn't he, halfway through that season, who became a bit more of a bit of a cult hero himself, didn't he? And he sort of helped rescue that season because it was really. I don't think there was ever any danger of relegation, was there? But it was a season that was kind of treading water, wasn't it? Really? Yeah,
like a transition one, really. Like players. Lots of new players came in and he was filling out some youngsters, and like I think he knew himself from what we'd lost that we weren't ready to be a playoff team again that year. It was one where it wasn't fun. Like we'd had 2 years where it was like all I'd known at that point was like brilliant football, goals galore, really positive dressing room. And then at that point, there were some frustrated people in the dressing room, the ones who'd stayed. They were like the fans. You could feel the fans were just frustrated. You could feel it, like they'd lost like their favourite players, and they weren't in love with the ones that had come in. Yeah, and then like you said, Alan Lee picked this up a little bit. I remember when Alan Lee signed. It was funny because I didn't know, like I always like watching football, but probably Premiership football, stuff like that. So I didn't know a lot about Alan, and I looked him up on the internet. And at the time, it just sort of said like 10 red cards. He come from Cardiff. I was like, this is just a beast. Like, who are we signing? And I was expecting like this guy to turn up, like that just looked like a baddie in a film or something. Do you know what I mean? Like, now walks through the door with like his long hair and his like soft Irish accent, and you're like, what? This guy who gets like 10 red cards coming from, and I was like, this is bizarre. He wasn't at all like what I pitched him to be like. And like you said, like he did really well as soon as he came in, like hit the ground running, and then had that connection. And I know it's like, I don't know if they were just relieved that there was another striker coming, but straight away the fans were behind him, and that can make and break people so quickly. Like I think the other two did feel like they were against it a little bit from the outset. So yeah, I think he came in and it changed the atmosphere, and like you said, the season got a bit better after that.
And then in the summer, I think we finished 15th, and then Joe moved on.
Joe leaves, yeah.
And then I think and Jim, of course, decided he was going to leave at the end of the season. So we all had leaving parties and handshakes and goodbye and views where. And then by the time we get to the end of July, Jim's the manager.
Yeah,
in the dressing room.
Strange, like really strange, because Jim, like going from a player to a manager is really difficult. And then pre-season was okay, and that's when I left after that pre-season. Jim, like I always got on with Jim. I like Jim. I like playing with him. I think he was good. I don't know if I could have played under him. I think it was a combination of both. Like he didn't, like I wasn't ever trying to leave. Like the move came out of the blue. Like I didn't know it was happening. And Jim was, I think Jim was happy with it. Like he was happy to have players that he hadn't been in the dressing room with. And I wasn't feeling great in the pre-season of just how it generally was. I wasn't quite sure what we were going to do or how we were going to play it. So the move came. Jim said, I think it was like Jim was happy for me to go.
So how did it work? So because Jim wanted Dan Harding, didn't he, from Leeds? And so did Leeds come in for you first, and Jim said, "Oh, we'd quite like Dan Harding," or was it the other way around?
Jim was like wanted a left back all the pre-season. He's like, "That's it. I need a left back. I want to change the left back." So I was like, "Fine." And I think they went in for Dan, and they said, "Okay," but they wanted me as part of the deal, and then it ended up that they said that Leeds ended up paying for me, and so it was Dan and money for me, and they called me in and just said, "Look, we had a really good offer. We want the left back. Like you can go, sort of thing, if you want to go." So I said, I was in the office. I was really sad, like a bit emotional. I was sitting there with Brian and Jim, and I just didn't I hadn't thought about it. I didn't know it was coming. I was sort of a bit dumbstruck and just went out and just rang my agent and just said, "What's happening?" I think he just said, and it was my uncle's wedding the next day, so I had to miss my uncle's wedding because they want me to drive up and do the medical. So I felt a bit bad, really. I was an usher, so I was like, "Oh, sorry, I can't come anymore." So then I drove up to Leeds. Had a medical and then signed for Leeds. Job done.
A big club to join. I mean, that's obviously, it sounds as if you're a little bit reluctant, but obviously it's an enormous. It's a sort of a step up in terms of clubs. But other than the fact that you're a local boy who's come through the ranks.
Yeah, I'm local. It hadn't crossed my mind. I wasn't thinking of leaving. It was like I hadn't been thinking, "Oh, I'm leaving this summer," sort of thing. I just thought, "Oh, we'll get the team better again, and then we'll get promoted." Like I just only ever thought of Ipswich because I'd only ever been here from 11, and that was just all I thought about. Went up there, had a medical. It was really weird. Like they'd been in the playoffs the year before, and they were desperate to get promoted the next season. And I went in, and it was like Steve Stone, Robbie Blake, like David Healy, and I didn't realise it was just like nothing I'd ever seen before. Like not like Ipswich at all. Just odd, just really odd. Like there were massive like sections of the dressing room that they sat with them and they sat with them, and new boys over there. It was odd. It wasn't like the sort of when I come through with Benty and Richo, we had like Bowditch, we had like the young guys, but like the pros were always trying to help you. John McGrill was really helpful. Vino, like they were young, but they were all sort of, although you're there to take their job in a way, but most of them sort of want to help you along the way. I went into Leeds and I was like, oh wow, this is really weird, like really weird, not like what I'd been at before. You
made your debut in a 1-0 win over Norwich, which obviously must have pleased an Ipswich boy. So what was it like? So you talk about it being a slightly different atmosphere. Quite a lot of managers you worked under at least, didn't you? I think Kevin Blackwell was the first manager, was he?
Kevin Blackwell, who was nice, brought me in obviously, liked him, and I was going to play. And there was Eddie Johnson, an American guy who played on the left, and he wanted me to play on the left. And he said, "Look, Eddie's coming to the end of his time here. You're going to play on the left." So fine. Played against Norwich, came on, did quite well. Richard Naylor had called me up and just said, "Mate, just smash someone." He's Leeds, yeah. He's like, Leeds fans are nuts. They just want like people to try their best. You're going to fit in perfectly. Just smash someone, and the fans will love it. So I made sure I smashed someone. Fans cheered. Happy days. Like played well. Thought, here we go. This is okay. First game, ticking the box, no problem. And then turns out none of the players liked the manager. And I hadn't been in this situation before. And the players were going to get the manager sacked one way or another. Like they just didn't like it. The relationship didn't really work. And it was quite toxic and just weird, and I didn't enjoy it to start with at all. And I was like, this is. And there was a young Jermaine Beckford there who they just signed. I think he used to work for the RAC, and he played for Havant and Waterloo or some non-league team. And they wouldn't even talk to him. They didn't think he was good enough to be there, and it was just really toxic. It was just really odd. He's the nicest guy you've ever met, Jermaine. Comes in the morning, shakes everyone's hand, says hello. And it just was he was just so unwelcome. I was just like, why? Because he'd come from wherever he come from. I don't know. It was just really odd how you fit or you didn't fit. It wasn't fun that first period. And then played a few more games, was going okay. Played at QPR, had a few, and then I'd injured my ankle in Ipswich the year before and had sort of a decent time off with ligaments in my ankle. And then I did my ankle again, and then I was in a boot for most of the rest of that season, which is frustrating. And then we get relegated in that season. The manager gets sacked. Ipswich relegate us.
I was there.
And we the Leeds fans charge on the pitch. And I like I said, I haven't played really anything because I'm in this boot. And I was just at the end of that season, I was like, what has gone on? That's just been the worst year of my life. Moved up here, haven't really settled. I don't know if there was 2 managers at that point or 3. The managers kept changing.
John Carver, David Geddes had a period as manager, didn't he? Town legend.
Yeah. We didn't really. Yeah, he had a go. Honestly, it was the biggest shambles ever of these senior pros who were too powerful. Managers just coming and going, and the performances weren't good enough. And me, I was injured and sort of just hanging out, hiding with the physios while all this is going on, thinking this has got to end at some point.
Dennis Wise came in.
And then, Dennis Wise came in, got rid of all of them, just said, I'm not having any of this. And Wisey to me is an absolute legend. And Gus Poyet came in, who's even more of a legend. And Gus joined in 5-a-sides as the best player I've ever played with. I don't care that he'd retired at that point. He was just unreal. You talk about timings of runs in 5-a-sides, he'd just arrive, but the ball would always be in the air, and he'd just do volleys for fun. Technically, he was just unreal, Gus. I was it was a privilege just to even be in a 5-a-side team with him. So Wisey came in. We got minus 15 points because we've gone into administration, and Wisey just sort of said, "FA hate us." All the Leeds fans hated him because he was Chelsea. They have this song Chelsea Scum. So he's the fans hate me, the FA hate us, the league hates us, everyone hates us. It's us sitting in this room against the world, pretty much. And it was the best, like, most enlightening moment. And we all just sort of went, yeah, like, let's go. And I think we won the first, God knows how many games. We were just on fire. We went from minus 15 points to like halfway up the table in no time. And up until Christmas, I loved that, like absolutely flying. And then Mike Ashley buys Newcastle and offers Wisey loads of money to go and be the director of football at Newcastle. Like, and he offers him loads of money, and he just said, he comes in and says, guys, like, we're away at Southend, we're on the team bus, and he said, guys, I'm really sorry, but I've been offered like a really good thing somewhere else. Can't hang around. Like, I've got to do it for my family. And we were getting promoted. We'd have gone from minus 15 points to winning the league that year, easy. Jermaine Beckford was on fire. The whole team was just like, whatever Wisey said, we were all together. And it was good. It was brilliant. Like, that was the best time at Leeds, just those sort of August to December with Wisey. And then, yeah, he just said on the bus, see you later. And then that was it. He literally got off the bus. That was a Friday night game. I think it was Thursday. We drove down. He got off the bus and went home. And then we had the director of football took the game on the Friday night at Southend. And then Gary McAllister came in. And then I didn't fit with Gary McAllister at all. And then that was pretty much the end of me at Leeds. I went out on loan a couple of times, but I wasn't going to play under Gary McAllister, simple as that. So that was it at Leeds. And then I had, off on loan.
Yeah, so you had plenty of loan spells, didn't you? Brighton, Cheltenham. You joined Cheltenham on a permanent basis, didn't you, as well, I think?
Yeah, Cheltenham was cool, like just a cool manager. So everyone called him Mad Dog, but it was Martin Allen.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I just loved him. Like, he was just good. Like, he was odd, he was weird. Like, we'd go on away trips and he'd bring his dog on the bus with us. Like, his dog used to come everywhere with us. Again, a bit like Wisey, like, would build like just a really good team morale. So like Joe did it differently, and it was fun. Like at the time, you didn't really think about it, but afterwards, you look back and just see how the managers built the teams. And yeah, Martin did it in a bit of a like a us against them sort of scenario as well, and used the sort of outside sources to sort of bring us all together. But yeah, it was fun. Like, I enjoyed Cheltenham. I enjoyed Brighton. Enjoyed Oldham. Joe Royle. I was back with Joe for Oldham for a little bit. Yeah, just sort of, unfortunately, like, it sort of fizzled out along with like lots of the same ankle getting injured and probably not being able to play to the level that I used to, and then having some weird things with like some odd times with managers. But it's just sort of like drifted, and then I went over to Montreal, which was quite fun at the end, and then yeah, came back quite young, but my wife was pregnant, having our first child. Like I said, with ankles and things, just wasn't really enjoying it as much. Couldn't do what I used to do. Like, I could still play, but not to the same level, and train every day as hard as I could. I just have aches and pains that I wasn't really enjoying. And then yeah, so just sort of said that would do. Back here now. And yeah, lived in Ipswich ever since, which has been quite nice.
Rich?
And a bit of time we need a market as well, though. So didn't officially hang up the boots, albeit at a lower level. Did that rekindle any of the enjoyment? Because as you talked about, you've had quite a whirlwind career, didn't you? And went through quite a lot of ups and downs through that time. And were you able to enjoy that at Needham?
Yes. So I thought I was going there to hate it. Well, didn't really want to sign. And then, so my father-in-law was involved with the club. I said, yes, I'll do a season. Went there. Boys were brilliant. Like, boys were absolutely brilliant. And I was surprised, like, how good the standard was. A couple of young lads who are now, like, sort of quite senior at Needham, who were just awesome. So it was nice to play with them. And, like, it's just weird. Like, I went there, I drove through Needham, which even when I lived in Ipswich and played for the club, like, I'd never been to Needham. And it's just a high street of, like, half a dozen shops and a few people and Needham Lakes. It's a really nice place. But I was like, I'm confused. And to this day, I'm confused. Well, I'm not. I know why. But you've got Felixstowe and Bury and Stowmarket and Sudbury. And these are massive towns. Like, massive towns. And Needham are miles ahead of all of them. I think they're the league above them. They've got an academy. They've got a 3G pitch. They've got, like, good changing rooms. Like, this is a tiny little place with a tiny high street compared to, like, a town like Felixstowe or Sudbury. And it was a brilliant time, and it was nice to be part of seeing that club grow. And it's just a club that's just so well run. so well looked after. The people who look after it and do things for it care about it, and it's nice to be a part of something when it's like that, because you're doing it for like the right reasons. And the football was like okay. First season again, ankle was still playing up. Didn't really play as much as I should. So I said to them I'd do another year, and then the following year I think we had record points, pretty much won every game. And it was brilliant. Like, we just smashed people. We had Kem Izzet from Colchester just retiring. We had Chris Hogg, who played at Ipswich. Like, we just had just two good, the young lads that were coming through. It was like Kieran Morphew and Luke. We just had too much for anyone. The manager was like manager's a local guy who does a lot of football, but we had Steve Foley as the coach, who was at Ipswich. Yep. So like, we had a great coach. A manager was good, just sort of motivationally would do a good chat before the game, but Steve did all the football. And yeah, so we just smashed it up, and it was quite fun. But then after we got promoted, you then started, these games were all like, longest was about an hour and a half, and they got into the other league, which I think they're in now, and they're like Bognor Regis away, and like, I was like, well, I'm okay playing if we're just going to Sudbury and stuff, but I'm willing to go to Bognor Regis on a Tuesday night. Like, my kids were born, and yeah, it was fun, but not Bognor Regis fun.
Yeah, I don't think anyone wants to go to Bognor Regis on a Tuesday, to be fair. And then a move into property development, and then bring us full circle to the co-commentary, the punditry gig with Glenn, isn't it? And on for iFollow, because you've had amazing feedback for that, and having spoken to you and listened to your insights about the game, I'm not surprised how well you've kind of got into that job. How have you found it?
Yeah, thank you. That's very kind. It's fun. Like I said, like, it's just talking about football, and I see football well. I see it, like, I talk to people. I know people in the game who are playing now. Like, the game, even from when I played, changed loads tactically. Like, I was saying this, we were talking to Glenn the other day, and the way our two centre midfielders play at Ipswich is so different from how any centre midfielders played in my time. Like, pretty much all of my career, you had a Makaleli, and Makaleli was like the key word. You had this defensive midfielder who you don't ever let the ball into the centre forward's feet. We watch Morsey and Evans are all over the pitch. Like, Evans protects slightly, but they're not worried about the ball into the striker's feet particularly, because they've got three centre halves now. One will push in tight, and the other two will drop off, and the ball will probably only ever go backwards. It's really weird how it's changed. It's like a lot more attacking, a lot more open. Like, the 2-10s is something that I never played in a system with 2-10s, which Kieran, like, is just his go-to system. But it's nice. Like, if I could sit up in the stand and play football, I would be an unbelievable footballer, or would have been an unbelievable footballer. But it's easy to sit up there and call it. But like, when it's like around you, and it's fast and it's quick, and it's like, it's so much harder. Like, it's so easy to sit up in the stand and watch it and go, look at the guy on the left. Like, why can't Wolfenden just ping out to Leif Davis? But it's not like, when you're in it, it's not that easy.
You can see why Joe Royle used to sit up in the stands in the first half. Yes,
and then it's sensible, and managers don't do it now because they have an analyst that does it. So like, Liam Manning, who's the MK Dons manager, for instance, I was talking to Liam when we went down and watched Ipswich MK Dons last year. They have a board, and the analyst comes down at half time, and they've got like a massive rollout board they take home and away with them, and they'll show them the spaces at half time, like visibly pull up. And like, this is like, we didn't watch footage at half time sort of thing, or they couldn't edit it that quickly at the time, but now he literally just pulls it up and go, look, like, right-sided centre half plays too narrow, there's a gap in between him and his fullback, play that pass. Like, and it's just unbelievable. Like, that's just brilliant. And like, it's easy to see sitting up in the stand, and then it's hard to work out yourself and do it in a match. But if you can get told at half time, oh, by the way, he plays too narrow, or there are your spaces, it's brilliant now. It's more of a tactical game. I think the players have got to be probably smarter than they used to be.
And maybe the coaches are as well. I'm going to finish on this one and your thoughts on Kieran McKenna. Obviously very positive so far, but any optimism for Ipswich in this season? I guess we have to be at this point, don't we?
Yeah, like, we win the league, don't we, by miles. Like, I didn't see the Plymouth game. and everyone tells me like Plymouth are good, like we're really good. But every other team we've played, like we've battered. Like we kick off, like we used to play when you kick off, you turn them for 5 minutes to stretch the game. If you just kick off and have 20 passes and the other team don't even touch the ball, like it's embarrassing, like how far ahead they are of the teams. Like tactically, I think Kieran has got us miles ahead of everybody else. Physically, we're a way better team than anyone I've seen yet. Like stronger, faster, fitter. Technically, we're better. Like I don't see how we don't get promoted. Like I really think we've got everything this year. And I just think we've also got good strikers. I know that the Ipswich fans, sometimes they'll cheers about the strikers and things like this. Like the job our strikers doing for the team at the moment is to take the centre halves away so that Chaplin, Harness, people playing in the 10s can get the football. So if people could just realise he's not doing that much that you can see, but he's just moving people away from the game to stretch it so that we can get the ball into those. And everything we do that's good comes from those two 10s. So just let them, like Ladapo, let them just stretch the game. And people are like, oh, he hasn't scored, he hasn't done this. Fortunately, like our centre forwards might not, like the work they're doing, and that's why they're coming off at 60 minutes. They're doing incredible things for the team, and our results are down to some of the work they do, but not everyone sees it, unfortunately. So yeah, like just chill out on the 9s, and we'll get promoted because they're doing. I promise they're doing a good job.
You said about subs earlier on, and you know feeling a bit kind of annoyed if you're a sub, but you wouldn't feel annoyed as a sub now because the game has changed. There's another aspect of the game that's changed, isn't it?
No, I would be annoyed because you want to play football. Like the subs, like I do think the mindset of players has changed that you have to realise that you are going to be a sub more now. Like the teams, especially in a squad like Ipswich, where they're just so strong and so deep in every position that they are going to rotate. I guess it's something maybe you get used to if you just come up playing that way. But yeah, no, you'd still be annoyed every time you don't start in my book. But yeah, Ipswich are good and they don't, they can play anyone at the minute.
Yeah, it's a good time, and hopefully that form continues. We'll be excited to hear the commentary from you and Glenn for the rest of the season. When are you next up? Do you know?
Yeah, this weekend. Then I'm on holiday, and then probably a few more after that once I get back.
Excellent stuff. Well, on behalf of everyone watching and listening, we always kind of try and say thank you to when we have ex-players on, because it's very difficult for us to say thank you when you're playing. But we appreciate all of the lung busting runs, all of the goals, all the crazy celebrations in front of empty Sheffield United terraces. And we all really appreciate the commentary and the work you're doing right now as well. So on behalf of everyone, Ian, thank you so much for talking with us, and all the best for the rest of the season, and enjoy it.
Yeah. Cheers, mate.